When you buy a car, suddenly, many people have had this experience where you buy a car, suddenly you start seeing that particular mark of car everywhere. In my case, because I've been laid off, news about retrenchment and layoffs will jump on me pretty much very often, every time I turn on TV or on the radio.
What's the skill that you think is going to be most important in this AI-driven economy?
That they have the knowledge and understanding of the industry. Maybe train your own data scientists, train your own programmers, train your own software developers. And that's on the technical aspects of it, but then you come on the mindset. How do you make sure that the people adopt?
A lot of young entrepreneurs are looking at AI and they're thinking, can I make money? Should I be getting involved? Is this an industry I can go into? Your journey from being laid off to becoming one of Africa's most sought-after technology speakers is truly inspiring. Can you share a pivotal moment that shaped your path to becoming a digital futurist?
Wow, thank you for having me. And that's such a great question. A question that I get all the time. When people get to read my story or hear about me, they get very intrigued as to how I came to even do what I'm doing, right? And it's a story that I've shared so many times. For anyone who has listened to me, I'm sure they've heard the story so many times. But it's a story I love sharing because I'm still getting used to it. Like, oh, did I really do this? One day I went to work. My boss called me in for a meeting that I thought was a meeting for me to bring him up to speed with what was happening at work at the time. But by the end of that meeting, I was jobless. So I would say that was the beginning of the pivotal moment for me, losing my job. At the time, it didn't seem like it was a pivotal moment or a blessing in any way, in any shape or form. But looking back, that was really where it all began, because after losing my job, I became very curious around the world of retrenchment, layoffs, and all of these things. And, when you buy a car, suddenly, many people have had this experience where you buy a car, suddenly you start seeing that particular mark of car everywhere. In my case, because I've been laid off, news about retrenchment and layoffs will jump on me pretty much very often, every time I turn on TV or on the radio. And because of that consistency in my consciousness, I became very curious. Naturally, I'm a very curious person. I want to know things. I want to read in between the lines, I want to hear even what is not being said. So because of that, I became very curious as to how do organizations continue to thrive when they let go so many people? Okay, in my case, it was just pretty much me or just a few people that were laid off. But when it gets to the news, it's usually in their thousands when you start hearing that this so-and-so company that laying off people is usually in the thousands. So because of these big companies that were laying off people in South Africa at the time, that was in 2016, 2017. So for me, I got really curious about that. I know that layoffs are now like a thing because technology is really disrupting a whole lot. We'll get into that. But anyway, at that time, I wanted to really know how organizations continue to thrive when they let go so many people. And so where else to go? I went on Google and I vividly remember typing the question, how do organizations continue to thrive when they let go so many people? And for the first time, concepts like automation, artificial intelligence, robotics, that was when they jumped on me. Prior to that, I had no clue what was happening in the world of technology. The only technology I knew would be to sit on my laptop at work, send emails, or use my phone for calls. That's technology, right? So that was all I knew. And now I'm sitting here on the internet and there's something called artificial intelligence. Listen, it blew my mind. Like, there's artificial intelligence. It's crazy that, anyway, there's so many people that are not paying the attention to the world of technology. And I was one of those. So I was completely clueless. So because now I'm finding these things, one of the reasons was for me I want to know how my boss is coping without me, but also to really understand how organizations can let go so many people and stick and don't crash. They somehow their profits increase, efficiency increase. Everything just seems to pick up when they let go so many people. But in my mind, or let me say in the layperson's mind, people are the lifeblood of any organization. But if organizations can get rid of so many people and it seemed to even do better, my curiosity just wanted to know all of that. And so I got exposed to this world of automation and artificial intelligence. So for the first time, I came to understand that there are processes that used to be done by humans that are now being done by machines. And I became really intrigued by that, very fascinated with the world of tech and all these things that I am like finding out on the internet. Mind you, I'm jobless, so I have a lot of time in my hands. So I'm doing all this reading, and I wouldn't call it at the time research. I was just reading on stuff. Right now, I'm intentional about artificial intelligence and research, but at that time, it was just me reading on stuff, and then I'm writing about it on social media. So people became very intrigued about the things I was writing on social media, and some people would literally come asking me questions as though I was the expert in the field. I was like, I'm not, like, I'm just as clueless as everyone else, right? But the more questions I got, the more I went back on the internet and did more research. And so the journey really began from there. Now I'm writing about this on social media, and I'm realizing that so many people have an interest to know more about what I'm talking about. And then I started my blog and started writing articles surrounding 2017 or so. And so at some point, I thought to myself, maybe someone should write a book about this. But I didn't think that someone would be me, you know. So I think the second pivotal moment for me would be when I actually made the decision to write the book, you know, and the book threw me in the spotlight. And I'm talking about disruption, right? So when the idea to write the book came, I was like, no, I don't qualify to write a book. So I talked myself out of writing the book. But the idea to write the book will not leave me. So I thought to myself, what better title than Disrupt Yourself or Be Disrupted? Because I was here minding my business and my boss disrupted my life. So when I wrote the book, yeah, it threw me in the spotlight. It became another pivotal moment for me. And that's how things got to where they are today. It's a long answer to the short question you asked, but yeah.
I think your book really emphasizes the importance of these emerging technologies, AI, and also just getting involved in them and reinventing ourselves. Thinking about your book, I think a lot of people struggle with the fact that they can't get out of the state of a stable job, which is a 9 to 5, which looks like paperwork and they can't get out of that state to this new economy that exists. A viewer watching there who still thinks, but what is this new economy you speak of? What is this AI driven economy and how should I be ready for it? What should they be doing right now?
For me, for anyone to even step out of 9 to 5, you need to actually identify what are you stepping out into. You just can't just step out, right? For me, I was pushed out. It was not an intentional decision for me. So for anyone to step out, they need to actually sit down and have a conversation with themselves. It could be any conversation around how is technology changing my industry? What do I need to do differently? Do I even love my job? Do I enjoy what I do? You know, I count myself, now that I do what I do, I absolutely love talking to people. I love having these type of conversations, right? I love empowering people. But that was not the case for me when I was working. I was pretty much miserable. But I needed that money, and it was pretty much the path that is like set for everyone. So I was like, okay, I guess I must just become part of this. So I think that for anyone to even think of stepping out of a 9 to 5, you need to have like a really candid conversation with yourself. What do you want to do with your life? How do you want to plug yourself in the digital system? What areas and all of that? And then that's really where the self-disruption, you know, becomes evident for people. But if you're not willing to ask yourself difficult questions and hard questions, do I love my job? Can I be replaced by a machine? Do I have the skills for the new economy to begin with? You cannot just jump into an economy when you don't have the skills, right? It becomes very difficult. It will be like being in a foreign country when you cannot speak the language. I was in Thailand recently and I struggled because the language barrier was a real thing, right? So if anyone is stepping out, they need to first really sit down and have a conversation with themselves before they even think of stepping out. That's what I would say to them.
As one of the top global thought leaders on digital disruption, what's the skill that you think is going to be most important in this AI-driven economy?
Wow, I think it is the skill to continuously learn. Because I had a talk recently at NetBank, and I was talking about the dangers of employing graduates. Follow me on this. I was like, because the graduate mindset is that I went to school, I'm a graduate. So I was saying, don't look to employ graduate. Look for lifelong learners to employ. Those are the people you need on your team, not graduates. Graduates went to school, they finished, they packed their books, and they think they're ready for the world, right? But it does not work like that. So I believe that this one skill that keeps you relevant is continuously learning, which builds on curiosity, your ability to just wonder what else is happening, what are the new trends, how is technology shaping my industry, how is technology shaping my profession. That type of curiosity and those type of questions is what will cause someone to actually go and do something different from where they are. It's what will cause them to take the next step. So if you don't have the ability to continuously learn, the certificate you had maybe 5 years ago is becoming obsolete. The knowledge is so fast becoming obsolete that you need to consistently plug yourself to find what is new out there. So if anyone does not know how to really consistently be a lifelong learner and they just carry themselves as, I'm a graduate, it does not work like that. Rather, be a perpetual life student than a graduate.
That's so profound, a perpetual life student. But for organizations small businesses and big businesses that want to implement this culture of continuous learning, what is your advice to them? How can they go about that?
By making sure that the workforce is upskilled. Because one of the mistakes that organizations do is that they jump in technology first. They look for the shiniest tech in the market. They deploy it in the organization without really thinking about the people, right? And technology without humanity is incomplete. The people aspect of it is just as critical as the technology itself. Why? Because the technology itself cannot innovate, cannot disrupt. It is the people that do it. Whitney Johnson said something, one of the thought leaders on digital disruption as well. She said, an organization is made up of tables, buildings, chairs. That cannot really in itself breathe any life into that organization. It is the people sitting around that table, it is the people sitting on those chairs that brings innovation, that brings disruption, that brings creativity, that brings in empathy and all of that. So if an organization focuses entirely on the cutting edge technology, state of the world, shiniest, best tech, and deploy it into the organization without bringing the people along, it will fail. And statistics shows that up to 70% of digital transformation fails. And one of the reasons is because the people are left behind. For example, an organization can decide we are deploying a technology that will handle customer service. And they sit at the top and decide this. There's no one from customer service that is in that meeting. These people have never dealt with the actual customer. And then worst of all, most of the technology is built outside the country. To people who don't even understand the culture. So around here, for example, in Africa, in South Africa. And then they deploy these technologies and they're surprised why it's not working. The people who work within a customer service, they understand customers better. They should be the part of the team building any technology that has to do with customer service. Not the CEO and a few board of directors sit and make these decisions. They have never had to deal with customers one day in their lives. And then they deploy it and they think it's going to work. It doesn't.
And what about the complaints that the customer service person won't understand how to program the AI or talk to that technology, and that's the reason why they just ship it off? How do we get that customer service person to integrate to that level?
They don't even necessarily have to know how to code the technology itself. They have knowledge about their field that will help the person who can code the technology understand how to code the technology better, right? But on the other hand, there are two ways to this. The person within the customer service can actually upskill themselves to also learn how to code the technology so that they are the one bringing the solutions to the
bosses.
To the bosses, this is what I think we can do. I've been learning, I've been exploring, I've been experimenting with this, and I'm thinking if we implement this, we can actually win. That is someone who is proactive. That's someone who is disrupting themselves. That's someone who is thinking outside the box, not just waiting for the organization to throw things at them, but rather taking initiative, right? There's a part I did a talk recently where I was talking about the wheelbarrow people, right? Those that wait for organization or their bosses to push them, to even suggest what to do. But when you take initiative, say you're in customer service, what we're talking about, for example, and you think of these things on your own and you present it to the team or to your boss, then you're already part of what is going on. So it's both ways. Employees, on one hand, they need to be proactive to make sure that they are relevant, and they're taking a hands-on approach in their own career development, meaning that when you go out and find this information on yourself, it's not your boss who asks you to do it. But then bosses, on the other hand, when they also go out to find the technology, that now you can see the gap between the two works. Even though they're in one organization, they're not talking to each other. The bosses are doing their own thing that they think will work for customer service. Meanwhile, customer service is completely left in the dark. But if customer service can take the initiative, it will be a win-win situation.
Out of all the organizations that you speak to, I mean, you speak to different organizations on digital disruption. What are some of the challenges that you find when you get there? I mean, we've spoken about the fact that there's that disconnect.
Yeah.
But what are other challenges that people are experiencing? Why do 70% of the transformation or digital transformations fail?
I think one of the big challenges is the fear and the uncertainty that the change that is going on in the world causes people, the anxiety, the economic anxiety. Oh, will I lose my job? Will I lose my job? This, I mean, for me, which is a natural way for humans to react to things, right? When they see organizations deploying all this technology, the biggest fear is, oh my God, will I lose my job? Will I lose my job? So that's one of the big fears. And at the end of the day, yes, there are people that will lose their jobs. We cannot sugarcoat this. It's just the truth. When they deploy these technologies, some people will have to go. So that fear, the best way that, for me, organizations deal with that is to empower the people that are left behind to make sure that they have the right skills that can work alongside these technologies.
What does that empowerment look like practically? And maybe let's take one of the viewers that's watching. They've got a small business, and in their small business, they do nails, hairs, they're a spa. How do they empower their people? Is it first hour of the morning, we're all learning about, AI or these robots that will plait hair?
Yeah.
What does it look like practically?
It depends on each organization, and it is not a one-size-fits-all model that works for everyone. You mentioned the smaller businesses, maybe hair and nails, and it's not every organization that we need AI, by the way. All right, because it's a hot thing in the market right now. Everyone is just like, okay. It depends what exactly your business needs. Do you really need to deploy this at this moment in your business, or you need to wait for a while and build something solid? Because also AI is not cheap. I mean, the real one, right? We don't talk about the free ChatGPT stuff and things like that. It's not cheap to deploy the technology in itself. So there are real questions to be asked. Are you deploying this for the sake of deploying it, or is there a real problem that AI is going to solve? Because the companies that are deploying it just for the sake of deploying it, they end up with more solutions than problems. What exactly are you solving for? What is the AI solving within your business? That is a critical question to ask. But when some people or some organizations hear, oh, there's something called AI, let's just deploy it. No, there has to be specific steps. What is this solving for? And you start by experimenting. Can this really fit into what we're doing right now? Let's experiment with which of the tools are we using exactly. Are we going with ChatGPT? Are we going with Copilot? Are we going with Claude? What exactly are we using for? How do we get people to start experimenting with all of this? So there's that experimentation stage. You have to start from there, and then maybe look at the cost, and then look at, okay, who are the right people to build this with? Do I have the skills? Because also, if you start with the technology without asking, does my team have the skills to actually implement this technology, right? So there are so many steps before you get to the implementation of it. If the people don't have the right skills, you make sure that they have the right skills. It could be pay for you ask practically what does it look like for the upskilling stage, right? You could pay extended courses for them as an organization for them to study. Maybe some programming language, which today there's no code. It exists where you don't really need to be a professional in coding. But nonetheless, organization can still empower their people by paying for those things. Let to make sure that they have the knowledge and understanding of the industry. Maybe train your own data scientists, train your own programmers, train your own software developers. And I mean, that's on the technical aspects of it. But then you come on the mindset. How do you make sure that the people adopt the digital mindset instead of sitting and planning the whole thing by yourself? How do you collaborate with AI to brainstorm and get things that would have taken you days to do and get it done in a few hours? How do you get people to do that? How do you get people to trust this AI? How do you get people to accept that using AI doesn't mean you're lazy? Because there are those people within organizations that don't want to touch these things. Like, I know I can do it. It's almost like insisting, okay, I'll walk from my house to here instead of driving. You get it? So AI is a tool that is helping people achieve productivity and efficiency faster and cheaper. But then how do you get people to actually start experimenting with this tool? When this whole thing started, people were hiding the fact that they were using ChatGPT. I mean that whole phobia, I don't know if I should call it phobia, is dying down now. But someone will actually use this tool and they will lie to you that they're not using it because why? The judgment or some sort of a stigma around, oh, you're using ChatGPT, you must be very lazy, hey? So it is now when the company has decided on what tools to use, they have to shift to the culture.
So the company should first start by deciding, are we doing Microsoft, doing Claude, are we doing,
platform are we?
and then instill it in the culture.
Yeah.
And I mean, when we talk about these decisions, a lot of people have come out to say, there's so many AI applications, there's so many programming languages, and a lot of people end up saying, we're overwhelmed. What is the roadmap that individuals and businesses can sort of take that makes sense? It's as though people are sort of saying, AI is moving so fast that if somebody had a degree on AI 2 years ago, today that degree is obsolete.
Absolutely.
What are those roadmaps?
So, like you're saying, how fast the world is moving. I mean, from the time we are sitting here doing this recording, by the time we finish, there will be so many updates that has happened on the background on many of these platforms, right? So when it comes to organizations thinking of, okay, how do we move the people forward? It is critical to ask, because it differs. It differs from tools to tool. A tool that organization A would use would not be the same tool that organization B would use. Again, because now it's overwhelming, so I tell people, bring it closer to you, to home. Let's give example like you are in healthcare. Okay, how is technology impacting the healthcare industry? Whether you as the boss or the organization or you as an individual. So when you bring it closer to you, closer to home, you feel less overwhelmed because you're not looking at it broadly anymore. It doesn't concern you what is happening within the fintechs, for example. You are not there in that industry. You are in healthcare. How is this impacting healthcare? What tools can I deploy within the healthcare sector that will help me evolve faster or serve patients better or become a better nurse or a better doctor? When you bring it closer to home, it narrows your search, so to say, of what exactly you need before you can evolve. But when you're looking at it holistically, it is so overwhelming because there are so many of the platforms. I can't even keep up. Like, there are so many of the platforms and they're coming every single day. When you think you've known, you see another whole list that has just been deployed. Even with ChatGPT itself, so many new models are coming up. We cannot even keep up, right? So it is when you think, bring it down to your profession, bring it down to your industry. That's the solution to being overwhelmed. When you bring it close to home, you will be able to find the solutions that work for your particular industry and for your particular profession. How is AI impacting my profession? Let's take again agriculture, for example. How is this technology impacting agriculture? What tools will work for the agriculture sector? Then you forget what is happening in manufacturing. You forget what's happening in construction. Focused on agriculture. So you start where you are. That's how you channel it down.
That's profound. Start where you are. In the success stories, global success stories, what are some of the success stories that you can tell where companies went through the process, implemented, disrupted themselves, and things really took off from there?
Right. I learned one thing: we need to be going globally. You just look here home. How much banking has gone digital? You and I, we don't have to go stand queues in the banks anymore, right? So there are so many success stories when you look around to see how much digitization has helped us to buy more time for ourselves, because we all, at the end of the day, we all have 24 hours, right? So the time you should have driven to, for example, say the bank and stand through queues and do your financial transactions and have to deal with some bad attitude and bad behaviors of some employees. Now you can do all of that from the comfort of your home and from the comfort of your smartphone. So that's clearly a case study that banks or financial institutions are deploying these technologies, and it's working and it's serving you on I time. Again, you look like groceries shopping today. Many people had to go into a physical store before they could buy groceries. But look at Checkers 6060. That's a good case study, right? You can sit at the comfort of your home and order your groceries, and it's being delivered to your house. So the success stories and the case studies are all around us. You just need to look and say, oh, this is what's happening. This digital transformation right at play.
Now, I mean, a lot of young entrepreneurs are looking at AI and they're thinking, can I make money? Should I be getting involved? Is this an industry I can go into? And a lot of them are finding, how do they go out there and sell or go to market? And what are they called? Are they consultants? Are they data scientists? And a lot of people are sort of trying to figure this world out. In your advice to a young person who's 18, 19, 20, 21 and wanting to get into the industry, what would you say they should do, or what are some of the paths that they could take or ideas that they could implement where they are?
I think that especially for a continent like Africa, Africa is blessed with problems. And if there's a young person listening, it is an opportunity to experiment with these tools to see what problems can you solve in your community using AI. What problems can you solve in your country using AI? What problems can you solve on the continent using AI? It is not the mindset to just go learn AI so that someone will employ you is not really something I advocate for. I think that we should be using AI, especially for the young generation, to find the solutions in the continent that we can solve. Continental problems we can solve, local problems we can solve, right? Using artificial intelligence. And it's something accessible now. AI is no longer something like in the past that was for the elite class. There's open source where anyone can go and pick many of these models and experiment with it. What can I solve? How do I use this AI perhaps to translate certain things in my local language so that it gets to the people in the community that do not understand language or English, for example, or just other business language that they don't get to understand, right? So I think it's an opportunity for entrepreneurs. It's an opportunity for creatives. And also, it helps when you partner with artificial intelligence, it helps you streamline certain processes that you would have need a team of 10 people. With 2 people, you can do it pretty much when you deploy artificial intelligence.
In terms of, the work that you do, you speak to companies, you consult, a lot of the times people find that, they don't want to attend events because they sort of say, what will be the takeout? I won't learn anything new, In your industry, it's different because when people come to your events, in fact, everything you say is new. I want to ask the question to say, if somebody's asking themselves and saying, I want to come and attend one of your events or where you're speaking or your conferences, what will I take home with me? What would you say to that person?
It is number one to understand that AI demands not just your attention, but your active participation. Because you cannot afford to sit on the sidelines. You cannot afford to say, this does not concern me, because that's how some people are thinking. You cannot afford to say, this is for the IT guys. That's, again, how some people are thinking. And so one of the key things that I really highlight in my talks is that this affects you, whether you are aware of it or not. There is no neutral ground, whether by choice or by circumstances. your life will be disrupted in this age and time. You cannot avoid it. So it is either you choose to be the one like shaping the disruption, or you allow it to run you over, because either way, you're not going to escape, right? So not necessarily just my talks, but any talks within the industry that has to do with tech or the future, plug yourself into that space. Learn as much as you can. Again, I talk about learning, being a lifelong learner earlier on when we started, right? It keys into that. Knowledge is never wasted. And in this age and time, the more you know, the better. Especially when it comes to artificial intelligence, or you risk being left behind. Because the mindset that this is only for tech guys, so many people are still holding on to that. And even saying, you know what, I'm not a tech person. You are. I tell people, if you have a smartphone, you're a tech person, right? You cannot escape it. So yeah, that will really be it, that AI demands your active participation, not just your attention. Don't just look at it and like, oh, another buzzword. And then you think like you can just walk away. No.
If you could implement one policy or an initiative globally to prepare people for this AI-driven future, what would it be?
I think when it comes to policies, there are special units or departments or governments that should be handling that, right? And it actually saddens me that when you look at the global map of how many governments actually have AI policies in place, or actually have departments dedicated to artificial intelligence globally. There are a few countries in Africa that are even doing that. Maybe you could count them on one hand, maybe 3 or 4. And it is heartbreaking, because the technology is moving so fast that it is not being regulated policy-wise. We have a tool in our hands that could become dangerous. It's not being regulated. So when it comes to policies, I don't think I'm the right person for that. I think that the policymakers should wake up, especially on the continent, to really put policies in place that will protect the people, we protect the continent, we protect our data. So if we have to go into that, so much data that concerns Africa is sitting outside the continent. What are the governments doing about that? And data today, as we know, it is the new oil. So yeah, when it comes to policies, the right people should really step up.
Looking back on your journey, what's the most valuable lesson that you've learned about personal reinvention?
Oh, I love this question. I tell people, for me, the best thing that happened to me is not that I wrote a book. It's not that I get to speak on these big stages that I never thought I could, find myself on. It's not that I get to travel to other countries to speak. For me, that's not the best thing. The best thing that happened throughout all this transition for me is the person I became. Because I expanded my mindset. I learned to think globally instead of locally. I learned to see possibilities instead of obstacles. I learned to see opportunities instead of obstacles. So the person I became in the process of doing all of what I have been able to achieve, for me, is the best. That's the best part of it, because it expanded me. It expanded me mentally. It expanded me emotionally. Going through such a dark phase like I went through, if you don't have a certain emotional range, not many people come back from what I've been through. So I'm grateful that, for me, that is the best part for me.
And as we close down the interview, what is your hope for your legacy in this field? Because I believe you've awoken a lot of people, you helped a lot of people in digital transformation, in personal empowerment, reinvention. What's the hope of your legacy?
I hope that people can get inspired by my journey, by my story, that the one thing you feel disqualifies you from doing what you need to do is actually the one thing that qualifies you. Let me unpack this a bit. When I came into this industry, I said, one of the pivotal moments for me was publishing the book, and the book threw me in the spotlight. The panic that I had was like, oh my God, no, I'm in tech. How did I get into technology, right? I don't have a background in technology, so that was so scary for me. That now I have to talk about things that I did not learn in the classroom, things that I have no background on, things that I have no certificate on, no degree on, none of this stuff. It's self-taught. I had taught myself everything I knew about technology. So the legacy for me would be that anybody can do anything if you put your mind to it. What you think disqualifies you is actually something that qualifies you. And I realized that there is a huge gap between the people and the technology guys that are out there, the technical people, I mean, the real tech people, okay, that are out there. There's a huge gap between them and the people on the ground. And I found myself as the middleman. It's almost like I take from them and I interpret it to the people on the ground. The first time I realized this was when I was invited to give a keynote at Momentum. And when I spoke on digital transformation, the CEO came later and told me, Nicky, thank you for speaking English. We've brought some of the best minds to these conferences. And the people couldn't relate to what they were talking about. Because they speak about technology so high up there that anyone who is not within the technology space has no clue what they're talking about. Now, me not coming from a technology background actually became an advantage because I simplify it for a lot of people. I speak in language that people on the ground can hear. Sometimes the tech guys don't hear me, and that's okay, but the people on the ground hear me, right? The technical people are too technical. They don't know how to simplify things for people. So what I thought was my disadvantage actually became my advantage. And that is one thing that I hope can inspire people, that don't discount yourself. Anybody can do anything if you put your mind to it.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Very profound words. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.